My name is Jack Prine. I'm here in a place I can't tell you about right now, but if you hear some blues band starting up in this cantina, it'll probably give you a clue. My boss, Rod Davis, wants me to read a passage from the new novel he's written about my exploits, East of Texas, West of Hell. Of course, I said I'd do it, and it certainly does cover all that territory and then some. Rod also feels like if you don't grab a reader right away, you're never going to. So I'm going to start in the first chapter of the book and read a little from that, and we'll see how you like it. By the way, this book, East of Texas, West of Hell, comes after South America, which I hope you read. It has the same characters, and this is something more that happens to all of them. And these books also might remind you a little of South America, might remind you a little of Karina's Way, which came out before that, and another one, American Voodoo, because this book also has some voodoo references in it. So let's get going with the passage, starting with chapter 1. I squatted in the soggy backyard jungle behind the meth house and studied what was left of the two bodies. Nobody was around, and likely nobody had been. If so, they'd left the remains as found, half devoured by dogs or raccoons or whatever else roamed this battered neighborhood southwest of Atlanta's big towers and big money. The faces weren't really there anymore. Neither was most of her torso. They were slumped at impossible anatomical angles against a vine-shrouded oak. I couldn't tell if they'd been tortured or merely executed and mauled. The entry and exit wounds on each remained obvious. The male corpse was black, maybe Latino. The female was white, so it wasn't Rose, which was a good thing, but a very bad thing if Rose had been mixed up with them, or with whoever had done this. First time I ever saw a dead body, I vomited. I was 12, volunteering in my small Texas town in search for a popular high school girl who'd fallen into a flood-swollen river. Fish and turtles had gotten to her pretty bad. Subsequent years and jobs covering mortal mayhem as a TV reporter or covering up more extreme mayhem for the military had all but numbed me to the impact. Still, this was barbaric. Night was descending fast, and I needed to move along, but I couldn't stop staring. I knew that led to nowhere good to stare. I shouldn't have been here in the first place, but I was. Elle had called. It was almost 5 a.m. She was so shaken that she could barely talk. She asked me to check on her runaway daughter without so much as a hello or hope I didn't wake you up, as if we'd had regular crack of dawn conversations instead of once a year awkward small talk around the holidays. Could I come to Atlanta as soon as possible? She said she'd been up all night making phone calls to Rose, but nobody answered, and now she thought Rose may or may not have been kidnapped, may or may not willingly have moved in with some kind of artistic wannabes who may or may not have been dealing meth. She couldn't call the police either way. I made a lame joke about having heard that about the police 3 years ago when I found her brother Terrell dead in a New Orleans gutter. How we met. But it just fell into a silence that confirmed how scared she was. Flights were full, and I barely booked one at double the usual fare on Delta to Hartsfield Airport. It got me into Atlanta by sundown and then to the address Elle had given me, which she said was the only thing she had. Now darkness was closing in, and I was staring at gore behind a house I almost couldn't find in a neighborhood that no longer mattered. I could hear thunder in the distance. Storms had been sweeping through the south for 2 weeks. I eased slowly around the corpses. Waist-high weeds squished under the soles of my old Lucchese's. Heavy rains had transformed the yard into a Rousseau canvas, primeval and lush and vivid and latent with violence. If the city had ever cited the place for code violation, nobody had ever done anything about it. A dog barked somewhere down the street. That meant other dogs might still be in the yard. The gate at the side of the house was wide open. I'd used it coming in. There weren't any dogs, but it seemed likely that strays or worse would return with the night. I shifted my attention to the surrounding neighborhood, listened for unusual sounds, alarms, loud voices, sirens. It was quiet enough for me to hear my own footfalls. The only real noise came from interstate traffic in the distance. The house itself was also dark, except for the faint glow of an electric light, probably from an inner room. It gave just enough illumination to convince me the best and maybe only way to go in was from a screen door hanging ajar on the back porch, which was basically a concrete slab. I started walking that way when I noticed something in the shrubs nearest the tree. Now I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit to the end of that chapter. There had never been any doubt from the moment I took Elle's call back in New Orleans I would drop everything to help. Until I had found the bodies, I thought it would be what Elle hoped against hope, a false alarm. Still, I was utterly confident I could handle all variables, that I'd be bringing a girl home to Mom, John Way, retrieving Natalie Wood and the searchers, damn the cavalry, fools rush in kind of thing. I would have settled for any of that. Well, I'll meet up with you now in the future, somewhere east of Texas, west of hell. In the meantime, stay safe.